When Nashua passed a camping ban in the fall of 2025, Housing Services Officer Latanya Musioli said the city owed the community an evidence-based approach and that it should look to see what has worked in other communities. The homeless crisis is not unique to Nashua. According to the 2025 State of Homelessness Report by the National Alliance to End Homelessness, counts are at a record high, driven by the nation's affordability crisis. In 2024, no community had enough housing to serve everyone experiencing homelessness. Musioli had said that there needed to be a priority on building housing that unhoused people could access, and that the immediate need was to provide shelter and temporary housing for people to stay in while housing was being built. Many communities across the country are bridging that gap with tiny homes. Community Development Director Matt Sullivan said the city of Nashua has considered tiny homes as a long-term shelter solution. Stakeholders generally thought pallet shelters were a viable solution and saw the potential and value in creating such a community. They recognized that they would give people a sense of independence and privacy that typical shelters do not. Lee Svenby, known as Miss Lee, spent 7 months at the encampment at Pine Street Extension. She said that maintaining her independence is paramount.
We're in there by 10 o'clock in the morning. We have to be outside no matter what. Oh man, if we can have that thing that you showed me around here, that would be a big help.
Sullivan said the city was not in a position from a policy perspective to proceed with the tiny home development at the time. The imminent need, he said, was to keep people out of the cold. The city decided to open an overnight winter warming station. Over the past several years, more than 100 pallet shelter villages have been constructed across North America, such as Echo Village in Providence, Rhode Island. Inklink recently spoke with program manager Rhea Lovell to learn about its outcomes and challenges. Echo Village, Rhode Island's first pallet shelter pilot program, opened in February 2025 and is run by House of Hope, a nonprofit community development organization.
Really, it was a response during the COVID crisis, right, in 2020, of being like, really hearing what folks who are living outside needed from shelters.
House of Hope staffs Echo Village 24/7 and offers wraparound services, including on-site case management, job training, and health-related services. According to Lovell, most shelters in Rhode Island shelter people on bunks with multiple people to a room, which is not suitable for everyone experiencing homelessness.
So this like response of being like, hey, I might have cancer, I might have COPD, I can't stay in a room during COVID with all these other individuals, I might have a pet, right? And so really understanding like taking folks who are actually living it and hearing what they're saying and what they need. And so that was House of Hope's response to what the constituents actually were asking for, is to provide them something that was really needed. It did take House of Hope quite some time to open.
According to NBC 10 WJAR, the project was publicly opposed by Councilman Pedro Espinal, who was opposed to a proposed location on Prairie Avenue. The Boston Globe reported that in October 2022, advocates called on the state to place 30 of the homes in Cranston at the Pasteur complex. But city council members opposed the idea. In all, it took 6 attempts before the state-owned land on Victor Street was landed on. A large part of the battle was due to confusion on how the shelters would fit into Rhode Island's fire and building codes, according to the Rhode Island Current.
There was a lot of red tape.
Housing forms such as pallet structures hadn't been contemplated under the state's codes, and although they are freestanding structures, the state fire marshal's office decided they would apply to the code used for hotels or dorms. According to Sullivan, these types of homes also don't fit into any of the boxes of Nashua's housing classifications. To qualify to live at Echo Village, individuals must be unsheltered and chronically homeless. Staff considers people who can't go to traditional shelters.
Taking the folks with the highest barriers, right? I have a lot of individuals with like physical barriers. I think I have 8 people in wheelchairs.
Priority is given to vulnerable populations, people age 55 and older or between the ages of 18 and 24, and those with pets. Residents receive a series of classes, and a housing clinic is offered, according to NBC 10 WJAR. So far, Lovell says the average length of stay is about 9 months, but there is not a time limit for how long people can stay, as long as they are actively engaging with the program.
We don't say, okay, you've hit your year mark, you're going to be out of here, because I'm taking the folks who have arguably the most barriers out of the state of Rhode Island. And so to say you're going to be housed and also in a housing crisis where in Rhode Island, especially, things have just completely skyrocketed for just housing. And so it's way less housing than there ever has been, right? And so it is this like challenge of trying to move people on, but what do we move people on to?
Despite that challenge, as of April 24th, 2026, there have been 14 move-outs from Echo Village into permanent housing.
We have had 14 move outs. We've only been open 14 months. I'm trying to see. I think that's right. And so that's one person moved out a month, which is great.
And while move-outs into permanent housing is part of the goal, it isn't the only indication of success for Level.
Success can be determined by all sorts of things. I also think like I have individuals who are actively built their community and want to see this succeed and grow. And so that to me is a success, as well as like the outcome is that the individuals that live here also have been investing in their own community with their neighbors. And so that's been very successful as well.
The Providence Journal reported that in October 2025, the State Properties Committee voted to extend the lease for Echo Village through the end of September 2026.
I've taken a lot of steps with the folks that live here, right, to understand that like we live in this community, let's take care of this community. And so really we haven't gotten a lot of pushback from the business owners and the houses that surround us, which is great. And that's taken a lot of steps to get there.
Providence Mayor Brett Smiley said that Echo Village is an important part of the administration's efforts to support residents experiencing homelessness, and that it is something that he would like to see replicated in other communities. Looking into other tiny homes in New England, we took a road trip to Rosette Neighborhood Village in New Haven, Connecticut, started by Mark Colville and his wife, Luz Catarino Colville. The Colvilles started the Amistad House of Hospitality out of their home in 1994.
The philosophy is very much anarchistic. We don't need to, we shouldn't be depending on the government. We shouldn't be depending on the church or anybody else, the social service agency, whatever, to do the work that our faith and conscience call us to do, and that the need outside of our door calls us to do.
With hospitality at the center of their faith-based practice as part of the Catholic worker movement, they opened their doors and served 2 meals a day to as many people as they could. In 2013, the Colvilles expanded their mission after reading a report submitted to the United Nations Human Rights Committee by the National Law Center on Homelessness and Poverty. It examined homelessness in the United States under the International Convent on Civil and Political Rights. The ICCPR, along with the International Convent on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, translates the commitment made by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights into formal binding agreements. Together, the ICCPR and the ICESR comprise the International Bill of Human Rights. The report declares that the criminalization of homelessness violates ICCPR rights, as many unhoused people in the United States routinely and disproportionately experience violations of their civil and political rights, and are targeted under laws that prohibit particular behaviors that some have no choice but to engage in.
So when we read this stuff from the UN, we decided that first of all, not only do we need to take it seriously, but we need to take it personally.
The following summer in 2014, Colville, with some student organizers from Yale, set up tents on public plots of land and spoke to neighbors about what they were doing. Each time, within a couple of hours, Colville said that they would become a center of community and mutual aid. However, they would never last more than 48 hours, as they would be shut down by police. When COVID hit in 2020 and more people ended up on the street, Colville and some other members of the community decided to set up a tent city in a visible location, to not only give the unhoused a place to be, but in an attempt to have the city change their policies and designate one or more pieces of land for the unhoused. The tent city lasted for 3 years, and in that time, Colville said he realized 2 things. One, while not without instances of chaos or violence, it was a tremendous success.
People had homes, and they were talking to each other. They had a community. They had people who were exercising leadership.
On the other hand, it became clear to him that the city had no intention of changing their policy and would dismantle the encampment whenever they saw fit.
And so we realized, in other words, that our campaign was failing.
The camp was demolished in 2023. By then, he had a new strategy.
We decided to publicly declare that our own backyard henceforward is public land. The second part of that announcement was, when you get swept, when the police demolish your home and take your stuff, you can come to our backyard.
In late 2023, they got 6 pallet shelters for the village. They did so, however, without permits from the city, according to the CT Mirror. The city said they were violating regulations and cut off electricity to the village. In January 2024, they got an easement from the city's Board of Zoning and Appeals, but the homes did not meet the state's building code. The homes were issued permits as temporary structures to last 6 months. When that expired in June, electricity was again shut off. From then on, Mark said they've had to run extension cords to the tiny homes from the main house. He said the zoning approval remains in place, but the city insists that operating the tiny homes requires a change in the state's building code. The tiny home project cost $123,940, including site preparation, electric work, delivery, and equipment rental, according to the New Haven Independent. The money was obtained in 10 months, Colville said, through fundraising events, including a Mother's Day brunch that brought in $40,000. The goal at Rosette is to foster a place of community, which Colville says is lacking in the traditional shelter system. Resident Suki Godek told the New Journal that she loves the freedom Rosette offered. At a traditional shelter, she wouldn't have been able to keep her dog, would have to check in her belongings, and return to the streets each morning. As reported by the New Journal, social anthropologist Annie Harper said life at Rosette isn't suitable for everyone. Some difficulties stem from the community's open door policy during the daytime. Some felt that Rosette offered too much independence. Mark said the most debilitating problem in the community has been drug use, as it stunts personal growth and creates conflicts and setbacks for the community. Despite the hardships, residents feel they are outweighed by the benefits, according to the New Journal.
What we were trying to do was to set up a model that can be replicated on a larger piece of land.
When asked about the city's position on a tiny home community, Nashua's Community Development Director Matt Sullivan said that he doesn't think the community and leadership are there quite yet, but the community will ultimately have conversations as the community continues to evolve. If Nashua were to pursue a tiny home community, Sullivan foresees a challenge being finding a site to host it. Not only is site availability critical, but finding one where the context is appropriate for this type of housing that is very different from what Nashua typically sees. The city's current priority, he said, is preparing for next winter's warming station and establishing the resource center. Ward 4 Alderman Tom Lopez has worked with Nashua's homeless population in various capacities for about 20 years and agrees that location is a hurdle.
In order to build a tiny home community in Nashua, you would have to, number one, have that plot of land and access to it.
While the idea of tiny homes is to have a place for people to stay while they get back on their feet, Lopez says that in reality, this doesn't always work without sufficient oversight.
There would have to be a somewhat long-term commitment by the city to contract somebody to run it. And in my mind, it should be an organization with institutional experience, someone like Family Promise or someone like the Front Door Agency.
Lopez says there would need to be a private-public partnership between the city and its departments working collaboratively with the program. He said it would also mean dealing with the politics of the neighbors.
One of the challenges we have in Nashua particularly is there's not a lot of open land right in the downtown area.
Yeah.
If you try to build anything related to homelessness or homeless outreach, the downtown merchants will fight it. They've been very outspoken against it by and large. So the area that has the access to transportation, medical supports, and nonprofits is also, you have competing interests. And that's where gentrification comes from. People who say, okay, well, I want this area for my needs, and other people with different needs can't coexist.
Lopez says he perceives the dominant voice in the city is not interested in helping the homeless, but is more interested in economic development.
It's something that people, I think, can very easily point to as, go do this, and then we're chasing that instead of actually helping people, where often it might take a micro voucher, it might take outreach, or it might just take the public being a little understanding of people who are struggling.
For those looking to start something like Echo Village in Providence, city spokesman Grondin advises communities to step up to the challenge and start with partnerships and planning. He said it is vital to understand that something like Echo Village is more than just a housing project, but also a stability project. And to be honest about goals and expectations, engage with residents early on, and build a program that prioritizes safety and stability for both residents and the surrounding communities. Echo Village Program Manager Rhea Lovell reminds those in the trenches of addressing homelessness to listen.
I feel like the homeless response system really tells folks what they need, and there's not enough people with lived experience at the table saying, no, this is what we want, this is what we need. And this is a good example. Like, this all came from, folks out in the community unsheltered being like, hey, we need this type of environment. And now look, right? Like now they have made it what it is, which has been really fantastic to see.
As far as tiny homes in Nashua, Lopez says that any solution will work as long as it is intentional and thoughtful.
If the city rallies around it, then anything can be successful.